Hello again. For today's demo, I want you to select an object that is a little more complex than just a standard vase or bottle. So you can see here I've chosen my trusty drill, and it's kind of an interesting shape. I want you to find something that's got some variety to it so that it's a little bit more of a challenge than what you did in the first painting. I've chosen, again, just two colors. I'm using my dioxazine purple and white. And what I want you to do, start by, laying the color in transparently like we did in the first painting and like we did in the landscape. And just get your form blocked in. So our goal, like it was with the last painting, is to try and make it seem nice and volumetric. Make it seem like it really is three-dimensional out there. I've kind of turned the drill so that it's, facing towards me a little bit more than it appears on your picture. And I get the nice drill bit laid in. And see, I've just roughed it in, got the shape, finding where the table meets the wall back behind it, seeing where the shadow is cast here, and then it kind of creeps up the wall a little bit there. So it's a rough drawing, but it will serve our purpose right now. So I'm going to continue just breaking the form down and looking at where light meets shadow. So what's facing me is a little bit more in shadow than the other side there. So I'm taking my shadow in here, coming in here where the trigger is for it. All the while thinking about trying to make this seem really three-dimensional. And I'm going to go ahead and do a little bit of work with the shadow that it's casting on the table and then on the wall behind. So just like that, light, shadow, space is created when you do something to distinguish the tabletop that it's sitting on from the wall. So got my basic form laid in pretty quickly, pretty easily. I'm going to get a little bit more opaque paint on my brush just so I can go in and really look at the drawing of this, maybe get it a little stronger. Really push the dark of that shadow here where it's coming off the drill. Go really dark here where the trigger is. I can honestly say this is a first in my life. I'm pretty sure I've never painted a drill before. But first time for everything. Trying to think of what some objects like this that you might find in your house to paint. You know, maybe a corded drill or something so it doesn't have that big bulky base on it, which I think needs to be made even a little bit taller here. Okay, I kind of like how this is looking. This is looking a little too short here, so I'll stick that out just a little bit. Now I think we're getting more into the shape of it. The shadow and the wall seems to be, from my perspective, just a little bit darker than the table itself. So I'm going to go ahead and take that shadow pretty dark here. See, you get a little bit of the shape of the drill coming through in the shadow back there. And just reinforce it a little bit here, but leave just a little distinction between where the wall meets the table. And if you recall the other day, we talked a little bit about cross contour lines. So when I'm painting the tabletop, you see I'm using the horizontal lines like I did in the landscape the other day. And when I'm coming into the shadow on the wall now, I'm going to use vertical strokes, because those vertical strokes kind of say that plane is parallel to my picture plane. Okay. A few more darks now. I want to push the shadow underneath the drill a little bit more. Just go ahead and really make that stronger, and then I'm going to come in and redraw around this when I get into the background. So at this point, I'm going to get my larger brush and I'm going to mix a little white with my violet and look to come in with kind of a medium value, roughly half and half on the violet and the white for the background. Oh, that's a little darker than I want still, so I add some more white. You can never tell whether the color you're mixing on your palette is right or not, because on the palette it's surrounded by one thing, and then when you put it on the painting it's surrounded by another color, and things look quite a bit different. And so that's more along the value that I want there. I'm going to thin it out with some extra water so that I'm keeping that whole fat over lean idea in play. Want it to be thin to begin with and thicker as I go along. If you get it too thick at the start, it becomes really difficult to make any drawing changes or any color changes that you might want to make as you go along. So if you keep it thin, you will win. Ooh, how about that? There's the rhyme of the day. Keep it thin and you will win. What you're going to win, I don't know. And remember our idea of getting rid of lines as we paint. Okay. Getting that color laid in. And something like that on the end of it. See, I'm redrawing the end of the drill as I'm putting in the background. So those lines that you start with, that's just an initial, kind of run through. You want to continue to look and reshape and redraw as you go along. Now, if I go farther with the background in terms of really getting some more value worked into it, I would make sure to use my vertical strokes back there as opposed to the horizontal strokes that we've used or will use on the tabletop. Now, for the tabletop itself, I want to go lighter, so I'm going to add some more white to that color I was using for the background. You want to mix it in really good on the palette with your brush so that you don't end up with different colors showing up when you're painting it. Let's say, yeah, that's a slightly lighter version of what I have in the background. I can put that on here. I can come in and redraw. Like so. And you see I'm leaving the white again on the drill on my object because I want my biggest areas of contrast and my strongest lights and my strongest darks to be on the object that I'm painting. In my case, a drill. In your case, I don't know. Whatever you find. Whatever tickles your fancy or sparks your imagination. So there I've got the back wall laid in, kind of cleaned up some of these edges. It's still real sloppy and loose, but it's got a presence to it, I would say. So I'm going to come in with yet another lighter value on the drill itself. Now right here, you see I'm using that kind of curved line like we would have used on the vase. And if you recall, we called that a cross contour line. And like so, to where it projects out where the trigger is. And then down like so. I'm going to need to get some more white on my palette here in just a second. When you start laying color into that white area, even if you're just painting it white, it gives it, you know, a presence. It makes it look like, okay, that's what I wanted that to be, as opposed to, you know, he didn't get finished with the painting and he just left that area white. Painting it tells the viewer that you're deciding, I want this to be white, I'm making it white, that's my decision. And see, I'm still using those little cross contour lines as I come in and make that a little bit rounder still. Okay. It looks pretty solid at this point. And I think you guys can see it a little better today. I worked all the lighting in my studio to give you a little better view. Take that up and let it meet that shadow on the wall there. Reinforce the dark on that shadow, get rid of that drip a little bit, although that doesn't worry me tremendously. And see, if you go over it where one color meets another, if you go over that edge with just a wet brush, you end up with a little bit softer edge. So now I've got my basic shape, my light on it, and something that I can really work with. Now, when you were doing your first vase, you know, I did a quick demo for you there, but what I do with the demo is just my idea of how I want you to start these things. So don't feel like you can't go further with your painting. You can make it as realistic and as perfectly blended as you want. It doesn't have to stay loose and sloppy like mine are going to be. I guess you could say my painting style at times can be a little loose and sloppy, but that's my aesthetic decision. So if you are really into realism and you want to make it look more real, keep working it. Come in with a small brush and a wet brush and blend, 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 and get things to really model carefully. I'm going to take a smaller brush here and start working some white back into the drill where things got kind of soupy. There. This is actually kind of a fun little motif to work with. This smaller brush that I'm using right now, the really nice thing about it, it's a red sable brush, which are more expensive than any of the other bristles or the synthetic brushes, but they're so soft. The hair is so soft, it's almost like what you'd find in a makeup brush or something like that, and it allows you to lay paint on really easily. Come on now. And you see where I've put a lot of paint on here before, when I come in with the white, it wants to blend together. So if you're keeping in mind what I said about using the paint really thin to begin with, then when you come in and start making some color changes like this, it won't fight you. If you get it on really thick and then you come in and start trying to blend some things out and make some color changes or value changes in the case of our single value painting, or single monochromatic painting, not single value, you won't have to fight it so much. So see the nose, if you will, of the drill where it sticks out here. I'm able to come in now with my lighter color and then let it stay just a little bit darker at the bottom so that I get a nice rounded form. Get some stronger whites down on the handle. Let that really pop out against the background at that point. And see where the cylinder of the drill starts to bend down. I leave it a little bit darker here. sometimes when you're trying to blend colors, it almost becomes like a scrubbing kind of action going on in there. You know, sometimes you'll see painters refer to, are you a scrubber or a brusher? Do you like to brush things on neatly and blend everything out? Or do you wear your brushes out because you get in there and scrub and rub and scrub-a-dub-dub, one painter in a tub? Yes, that was terrible. And what am I trying to get rid of here? That outline, that line that was there. The base of the drill where the battery attaches is black, but I'm not painting it as such because it's in the light. So I'm leaving that light because in leaving that light there, I'll have better form when it turns over to the shadow side. Soften those edges just a little bit, blend them out just a little bit, like so. I think I want to come in with the background color here just a little bit darker than what I have on the drill itself, so that the drill will pop there, and try to get rid of that line. And I'm getting kind of thick and soupy here with the paint. You can stay thin if you want to. I tend to just glob it on. Kind of like that texture that it gives the painting. So let's go back to our purple. Yeah, see now, if I come in with that kind of color for the background, see how that makes the drill itself pop a little bit more. That's too small a brush to be using back there. There we go. Sometimes I'll get working on a painting and I'll just keep going over it with the same brush when probably a different brush would do me better. The thing is, you don't want to just keep using the same brush everywhere, because then all your brush strokes end up being the same size everywhere. There we go. Getting a little better on the shape there and there. And I'm getting a little bit more of that violet in the background, so I'm getting a little better separation between the wall back there and the color that we've got on the tabletop. There we go. You want your background color to be lighter than the shadows on your object, but darker than the lights on your object, and that way you'll get the most impact. Your object will stand out more if you'll do it in that fashion. I've got a lot of light up high on the wall behind this guy, but I'm going to let it stay fairly dark all the way up, just for the overall look of the painting. Remember still our motto, paint fast, with big brushes. Now, if I were to look at this right now and say, okay, what area of the painting do I think is working best? I really like what's going on around the trigger there. I think that's kind of a cool spot. But you never want to fall in love with any one spot in your painting, because once you do that, you get really hesitant to change that area at all. And when you stop looking and say, oh, okay, I really like that spot, so I'm going to try and save it, when you do that, then oftentimes the whole painting goes. You've got to be willing to make changes to even your favorite spot in the painting. Now there's a little seam kind of where the black battery base meets the body of the drill, so I'm going to try to separate those with just a little darker value and make that pop a little bit. Maybe I need to find a new word for pop, but I think you guys understand what I'm trying to say with that word. And then I want to just show that seam along here, let it come in like that. Okay, I'm going to take, I had a smaller round here somewhere. Ah, here it is. I'm going to take a smaller round now and go back into my darkest violet and start to add a few details into the drill. Redrawing that shape again. I think I'm getting, you know, you should just don't worry about it at the start about it being too perfect, because you're not going to get it perfect the first time. You're not going to get it perfect the second time. But if you just keep plugging away at it, it's going to get better each time. So, see, I've got something better now in terms of the shape. Whoa, that was a lot darker than I expected. Sometimes I forget what's on my brush and I just plug away, but that's all right. Okay, getting a better shape now for the drill. Okay, back to my little brush. I like these little ribs on the chuck. Kind of fun to just go in and suggest those like that. And then there's some more of those ribs here. And you get the drill bit itself. I'm going to come in and start with just the dark here. The dark on the drill bit. I'm going to leave it like that for a moment. I'm going to come in with a couple more details along here. Now the reason I wanted you guys to pick, you know, something a little more detailed is so that you've got a little bit more of a challenge, and then also, yeah, this is a challenging shape and there's a lot going on here, but I don't want to lose track of the volume, the three-dimensionality of the object. So you're still painting this like you were the simple vase or bottle, and you want to keep that foremost in mind, so that as you go along, you've still got nice volume on your object, but you've got a more interesting object to look at rather than just a simple vase. Okay. There's a little doodad here I'm gonna kind of hint at. Have a couple spots where there's, you know, the little place where you put the where there's holes for screws to go in, and I'm just gonna suggest those really quickly here. There's a switch right here. So you don't have to be super detailed with these things to just get the idea of what's going on with your drill or with whatever object you happen to find that you can work with in your house. I'm going to do a little more blending here. Let that shadow come through. Maybe let it just start to creep down the edge a little bit here. Another one of those holes in it there, and then some look like almost vents back here. Now see, I'm adding all these details, but I have not lost track of the overall volume of my object. Okay. It's kind of rough. Yeah, I got that. But I've got the idea of it. I think my handle has gotten too chubby. So I'm going to redraw that, and I'm going to do it by just coming in with my broad brush to the background here. Oh yeah, that's much better, isn't it? I very rarely do just monochromatic paintings, but they can be really instructive and help you just see what's going on. A lot of, you know, kind of how-to painter books talk a lot about the value pattern, the value range, and I think they get a little carried away with it, because for me, color is the most important thing. But if you can't get the drawing down, and if you can't get the three-dimensionality of the object down, then the greatest color in the world is not really going to save you. So we're starting the semester out really working with a lot of drawing problems and trying to understand value and get these things to work from a value pattern sort of way. And then here pretty soon we'll start using a full range of color. And I think that made a big difference in the shape of the drill, and I think I also need to just slim it down a little bit right here. Yeah. That's looking better. Okay, I want to load up my small brush with some white now. Clean that brush off. And when you're coming in at the end and trying to get some, highlights or details in, that's a good time to start to put the paint on a little bit thicker. Okay, that looks like that's got a little bit more of a point to it now. I'm going to come in here and just make some of the lights a little bit stronger. Kind of a nice metallic edge there. So I'll let that light creep down into the shadow a little bit because it's more reflective. There's a little kind of lip that sticks out there that catches some light. That's a nice detail to add at that spot. Okay. Now you see right along this area, the drill changes from orange to black. I am ignoring that because I'm more concerned about telling the viewer where the light is. And if I painted that black at the edge, it's going to look more like it belongs on this side with the shadows. So, leaving that part light. Looking for a few highlights here and there. I also want to come in and see, I've got a really thick line here, and I want that to just be a thin detail line. You say, well, I don't have a brush that small. Well, you paint it in thick and then come over it with your lighter color. And look, now I've got a nice thin brush stroke there. I'm thinking about whether I want to maybe go a little bit lighter, at least in places on the tabletop. Maybe here is a nice place to bring some stronger light in. But I don't want it to get confused with the light on the drill, so that's probably all right there. Just dragging my brush across this to reinforce the horizontal strokes on the tabletop, get some sense of my cross contour line going there. This seems to get a little lost in here. What's the drill and what's the wall behind it? So I'm going to come back in with some stronger darks now, kind of in the home stretch of this painting or this demo. Yeah, just take some of those darks a little darker. Yeah. All right. And let that little shadow tuck in there. that little light that just popped out there is kind of a nice distinction between the table and the bottom of the drill, the base of the drill. Take some stronger darks into my shadow there. Yep. So I think that just about do it for this demo. I managed to get this to pop and this to pop on that side. That's what you want to do. You want to have your, where did that brush go? Oh, it's over here. Just a little bit lighter, a little bit cleaner there. There we go. And maybe just a touch darker here. So again, your assignment for next week is to have a single object dramatically lit, but a more complicated shape. That and your landscape that we worked on Tuesday. So I think that will do it for today's demo.